The primary goal of every calf cow producer is to raise many superior calves as possible. Accomplishing this goal has improved over the years with the embryo transfer technology. It is now possible to raise several calves from the same cow at once. Today at ADC Genetic Centre, we explore how farmers can benefit from this venture. This is Ukulima Mazao Bora. My name is Jedida Chepkosgei. Dr. Morris takes us through what embryo transfer technology is and how it is important in farming.
Welcome to this particular session in which we are demonstrating the embryo transfer technology. As you are aware, this is a technology which has been with us from the early 90s, specifically the non-surgical procedure, whereby then no surgery needs to be done on animals as to take the technology. But before we go far, first of all, what is embryo transfer? Embryo transfer is breeding technology which allows the advancement of both the male side of the divide, the sire, and the dam. The technique involves superovulation of the donor cow, the animal selected with good breeding qualities, among other things, reasonably high volumes of milk against their peers, and those are the animals then which are given a chance to get more calves in a particular year. Hormones, specifically the fertility hormones, are used to bombard the ovaries, and then instead of the ovaries releasing one egg, then they are able to release several eggs at a go. In the process of doing the superovulation, then other drugs are used to cause synchronization, and so the animals, the donors, then would come on it on one particular day, and then on that particular day they will be given artificial insemination. And artificial insemination here would involve several rounds, 12 hours apart. If when we are using sex semen, we would use double straws per every insemination, and that would be up to 6 inseminations. So a total of 6 straws would be used. In some cases, we've even gone much higher than that. We've even used up to 10 or 12 straws in the course of the insemination, all of which then goes to ensure that we maximize conception. But in all the times we've done using sex semen, we always still end up with unfertilized ova, and that's where the challenge is. Having said that, then once the inseminations are done, 7 days later, that's now when we come in to do the flashing work or the harvesting work. And this is the kind of work now which is being demonstrated in this particular video. It's important to note that the work, the transfer work itself involves the introduction of the catheter right into the uterus and way beyond into the fallopian tubes. And it is one tube is handled, one section is handled at a time. Most practitioners would prefer the left hand side, and then they would go to the right hand side. Of course, there will also be that choice by the practitioner. For example, then if any of the horns has performed much better, then they would go to the horn which has performed better first, and then they would go to the one which has produced least embryos secondly, or in which the performance will have been gauged by way of palpating the corpus luteum, the CL. So that's actually the first thing which would normally be done, the palpation of the corpus luteum. So once the catheter is introduced, then there'll be what we call cuffing, that is getting the stylet to hold in position. And then when it is held in position by way of fluid which has been injected through, you can see in the catheter, the yellow section, then it will hold together, it will hold firmly, and with the catheter in position, then it's feasible now to introduce fluid into the uterus and out. That's why then, in fact, this particular catheter, we use a 3-way catheter, which allows us to secure first the catheter, as I mentioned earlier, and secondly, it also allows us then to get water in through one of the tubes and out through the other tube. The earlier catheters then had a mechanism which would allow all the fluid to go through one particular section, but this is an improved version which allows then the fluid to go in on one side and come out on the other side. So basically then when the fluid come out and will be washing, in that flushing, then the embryos will be coming out, and you see that the fluid then get to be tapped in the filter, and it's the filter then which allows then the embryo then to be captured and finally be taken for examination in the lab. So basically that's the technique, and that's the way it is done. In the lab then it's a matter of picking the quality embryos which then qualify for transfer. Embryos which are of low quality, then they would normally be discarded. I also want to emphasize the fact that the 7-day window between heat and the harvesting actually allows some reasonable growth of the embryos to the blastocyst, to the marula stage, and those particular stage whereby the zona pellucida ring has formed allows then the manipulation by way of the fluid coming by getting the embryos out of the uterus without necessarily causing damage or injury to those particular embryos. So that's the choice. But again, it's also at the point whereby implantation of the embryos have not taken birth to the uterus, so they can easily be dislodged from the fallopian tubes. They are still in their journey going down to the uterus, and so they can actually be then dislodged easily, and by extension then be captured in the filters, and by extension then the washing, so to say. At this point then I would like to discuss more of the challenges. First challenge which we need to recognize and appreciate then is the high cost of the technology. Embryo transfer has a cost implication, especially the technique which is being demonstrated here, the multiple ovulation embryo transfer. The cost of hormones tend to be quite big, and so this, along with of course the practitioners fee, tend to push the cost of embryos and the cost of the preparation of animals quite high, and so that we find puts many farmers off, as like they would rather go for artificial insemination, which is a cheaper alternative. But we believe strongly if there is a subsidy, then many farmers then would be able to afford. The second thing which stands out is the success rates. The complexity of embryo transfer per se is such that it's complex to do with a precision technique, and a lot of practice then is required. And even in the cases whereby there's been very, very strong practice, it's like there's very high proficiency, then success rates are just somewhere between 50 and 60%. And many people would find this quite off, hoping then that, that like maybe other techniques, success rates will be much, much higher. But we want to say that in spite of those particular challenges, embryo transfer has its place. The other thing then which is critical then is the level of commitment. Embryo transfer is not a one-off solution. For many of the farmers then who have succeeded, they need, and both the farmers and the practitioners require a lot of resilience to see to it that actually you come to the point of good success rates and the point when there will be returns for the investment and for the work which is being done. Then we also need to recognize that because of the hard work involved, the other challenge remains the fact that we've got very few practitioners. This embryo transfer requires like almost a lifelong commitment, and this is the kind of commitment then many people are not willing to put, and mostly because of the fact that it requires constant practice. It's not like you can just practice once in a while and expect to be very successful. No, you require that you put constant work, constant effort to actually see to it that proficiency is achieved at the highest possible level. I also want to mention at this particular juncture that in spite of those particular challenges which are put out forward there, some of these things then can be addressed. One of the things, and I've alluded earlier, is the need then to get subsidy for programs which are being rolled out. Like every other technology, it's best for a development partner or government or whatever other body then to help mitigate against the risks by way of subsidy, and allow then the technology then to take root to the point whereby success rates are reasonably high, and that way then the private sector or even if individuals then can come in knowing confidently that the technique then is at a level in which they can invest with a reasonable good return from that particular effort. The other thing then which is also required then is like a good level of investment both from the public and the private sector. Without that investment, and it can also be converted to goodwill from the side of government, then the adoption of the technology then will not be feasible. The technology would, in that case, then just be something then to showcase periodically, but it wouldn't get that traction it would require then to have an impact. So really it's a call and a rally for the people then who want success in this particular country to come out and give embryo transfer a chance. We feel with commitment, we feel with goodwill from government and all the other stakeholders, then technology then can be used and it really have a big difference. At this particular moment in time, especially when dairy is going through its own unique crisis, whereby availability of quality animals is not that easy, then this technology is seen then as a way then to bridge this particular gap. In fact, that's the reason why Agricultural Development Corporation has gone strongly, has taken up the technology strongly, in appreciation that when done well, and when success rates are really quite good, then through the technology, many farmers then are able then to get good quality animals at much lower cost than if they were to wait for animals then to be bred elsewhere and get them matured. And it's also an appreciation of the fact that animals which have been born by way of embryo transfer then are a cut above other breeding animals because of the selection process and the fact that the resultant products are more often than not much better than a situation whereby artificial insemination has been used. So again, the fact that you have one cow giving you up to 10 calves, and even those particular calves, when they mature, you can still breed them with even much better semen and sires. That way then really this particular technique is second to none in taking the farmers or a farmer to a level of very elite cows within a very short time. We believe with good investment, 2 years, 3 years of good embryo transfer work, it's possible to develop even an elite herd of 100 or 200 animals, depending then of the level of investment which is required. And let's also not forget the fact that when we are using even low value breeding animals, we're looking at the Boran or even the indigenous breeds and getting them then to carry the superior European breeds. I think this technology then is available also for farmers who could be at the very basic level, the foundation level, and they themselves then can be able then to appreciate and get high quality animals within 1 generation or 1 to 2 years, so to say, of good breeding. So given a chance, and we'd like to call upon and rally and all concerned that this is a technique to be given a chance. This is a technique we should embrace and give it a chance then to take a life of its own, and let it be given a chance to make a difference in this particular country.
So I believe embryo transfer has a place in Kenya, an important place. It's what you'd call a niche breeding technique, meaning it has its place, and that does not negate the fact that you also have other breeding techniques, particularly artificial insemination, what you call assisted reproductive techniques. And although embryo transfer also utilizes artificial insemination, as part of the program, as part of the process of being able to obtain these embryos. So my take is that if you are a farmer who is interested in maximizing on the potential, the genetic potential of your high value animals, high producing animals, and high producing means that if you have a farm, for example like this in ADC, and you target your top 10% of cows as far as productivity. So if your herd average is 30 liters or 20 to 30 liters per day, you now target those cows within your herd that are on the upper range, let's say 40 to 50 liters per day. And then you choose 1 or 2 of those cows, and then you obtain semen from a high producing bull also, and use that semen to inseminate this particular high producing cow. And then after you've done that, 7 days later you harvest your embryos from this particular cow, and on average a cow will give you, let's say, between 5 to 6 embryos. And then now these embryos can then be transferred to what you call recipient cows. And recipient cows are surrogate cows that will have been synchronized to be at the same stage as the donor cows. And they therefore are able to carry the pregnancy to term. And these, the most common breed that we use for as recipients are the Boran breed. The Boran breed it's hardy. They also have very good mothering ability, and then they also have a good frame, body frame. So even if you transfer a Frisian embryo, they're able to carry that embryo and without having problems of dystocia. That would be a challenge with the smaller breeds. So you end up with, from one cow, just to speculate on it, which has 6 embryos, and these 6 embryos are carried by 6 recipient cows, and then that way you're able to improve on the productivity of this one cow. A cow would give you normally a calf in a year, a good cow. But using embryo transfer, and if you do it over a period of time, you can end up with 30, 40 calves from this same cow that would otherwise give you probably like 5 or 6 calves in its lifetime. So you're actually maximizing on the genetic potential of your cow. But you're also maximizing on the genetic potential of both the male and the female. That's a unique difference between AI and ET. Because ET, you're using both a high-value donor and a high-value bull. In AI, you're only using the high-value bull. So here, you're improving your genetic potential so much faster. And that is really the niche or the area that we are exploiting when it comes to use of embryo transfer within the country. So any farmer who's interested in carrying it out, that would be my take to tell them as to why you need to carry out ET. Of course, there are challenges, and they need to appreciate their challenges, one of which is cost. It's much more expensive than AI, so they would need to be prepared to invest in that. There are also challenges in terms of the people able to carry out embryo transfer. It's not every veterinarian or every AI technician who can carry it out. They need to go through a process of training, and not just training, but practice, so that they can become more proficient, both in terms of harvesting embryos and then also good conception rates. And then there's the cost of not only what the farmer needs to pay, there's also the cost that the practitioner incurs, being able to obtain capital equipment. You need what you call a stereoscopic microscope, because the embryos are microscopic. You cannot see them with your naked eye. So you need a microscope to see. So the microscope itself that is purchased by the practitioner or the institution is expensive. And then there's a whole range of different consumables. So you have filters, you have wide junction tubing, you have embryo transfer guns, AI guns, the media themselves. So you have flushing media, you have holding media, you have the hormones. Nowadays we use what you call Stimufol. This is basically follicle stimulating hormone. You have estromate, which is basically prostaglandins. There's a whole range of drugs as well as consumables. So that increases the costs that are required. So for example, if you want to flush a donor cow, it will cost you anything in terms of the whole process of preparing that donor cow, anything between 50 to 80,000 to carry out the program, the entire program. And to do the transfer will cost you anything between 8 to 10,000. And then in comparison, when you look at, and then that doesn't include the cost of the animals themselves. You may have the donor cow, but you may not have the recipient. So you have to buy recipient cows, i.e. the Boran animals that will act as surrogate mothers. And then when you compare that with AI, which on average, if you have fresh semen, will cost you 200 shillings, or even if you put in the practitioner's costs, you're talking probably 1,000, or if you're using sex semen, 5,000 to 6,000. There's a big difference in costs. So those are some of the challenges that the farmers when you explain that to a farmer, they probably find that it's a bit expensive. But an institution like ADC, that has a long-term view when it comes to their productivity, and especially in an institution like this, which also has a bull station, where they can be able to use the ET bulls and have a semen from them, and then sell that semen throughout the country. They would be able to utilize this technique in a very efficient manner to improve on their overall productivity, both for the cows and also for the bulls. So embryo transfer has its niche, it has its challenges, but it's an extremely useful technique as long as one is able to have good embryo yields and good conception rates.
Thank you for joining us. This has been Ukulima Mazao Bora. Until next time, goodbye.